20 years since the Dayton Peace Accords, yet the spectre of sectarian violence continues to cast its dark shadow over the Balkans. Well, you might have expected Croatia to be the poster child of the region, but despite joining the European Union 2 years ago, success just seems difficult to achieve. Well, I'm here in Bratislava, Slovakia for the Globsec Security Forum, and that's where I caught up with the Croatian President, Grabar-Kitarović. President, many thanks for joining me on the global conversation.
Thank you.
We hear all too frequently that the Balkans are on the edge of falling back into intra-ethnic violence. But how close to that edge are we?
I wouldn't say that we're on the edge of an inter-ethnic violence again, but certainly there is instability in the Balkans. There was a sense of optimism in the early 2000s because of the Big Bang enlargement of the EU. Now we see that that optimism is turning into disillusionment. And we have witnessed several incidents in the region. So coupled with the new threats that we see on the eastern borders of Europe, where the concepts of state sovereignty, territorial integrity and political independence have been threatened or put into question, and alongside with the instability in the Mediterranean region, the conflicts in Syria and Iraq and elsewhere, the illegal migrations and the return of fighters from ISIL, from Syria and Iraq, that is all complicating the whole security environment of Southeast Europe.
It's 20 years since the Dayton Peace Accords were signed by the leaders of Bosnia, Serbia and Croatia. And as you say, we seem to have reached an impasse. How do you break that impasse then?
Well, certainly the European Union and NATO have to send very firm messages to the region. First of all, that enlargement remains as a policy, that the door remains open, that it's not a moving or an elusive target, but that proper work, efforts in fulfilling the criteria for membership, in carrying out the necessary reforms, the progress that you make at home will be rewarded in a way by appropriate steps on the way to the EU and NATO membership. For instance, I believe that it's crucial for the region that Montenegro be issued an invitation to join NATO this year. It would be a strong message to Montenegro, but also to the whole region, that the process goes on, but also that you need to put in the appropriate effort in order to make progress.
Well, we asked our online audience to send in questions for this interview, and we got quite a lot of astute queries and commentary. And I'd like to bring in this voice, and it's Ishira, who asks, what would Croatia teach other countries in the region who are candidates for the EU in terms of reforms and political stability? Because you also had a rocky path, but what did you do that they're not doing?
First of all, I would say that all the reforms, everything that you're doing for the benefit of your own country. That the road to membership is as important as membership itself. The membership is a goal.
Could you pinpoint something? What should be happening that's not happening?
I would like to see more effort on preventing organized crime, cooperation in the matters of security, but also a more vigorous fight against corruption, media freedoms, democratic systems, control of the intelligence sector, and the proper usage of the intelligence sector in accordance with the law.
Well, that brings me to the Macedonian crisis. The former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia is also a candidate for the EU. They've slipped into political crisis. Croatia has taken up the rather thorny role and said, you'll mediate there. Does the leadership need to go if that crisis is to be resolved? Because Croatia faced a similar situation not so long ago.
It's certainly for the Macedonian people to take that decision. But whatever leadership we have in power, they have to realize that it's up to Macedonia to make that progress. I understand that there is the bilateral issue between Greece and Macedonia, but it's not about the name any longer. And the sooner they put more effort into really looking at those media freedoms and the independence of the judiciary and many other reforms, and continue vigorously with opening up, the more progress they will be making. It is up to them.
Serbia. Relations with Serbia have improved but still remain very tense. And I was speaking just last month to the Prime Minister, Aleksandar Vučić, and he evoked Operation Storm, which for Serbians is a national tragedy. They see it as ethnic cleansing. Yet Croatia is going to be holding 2 days of celebration. Is that not pouring fuel onto the fire, celebrating an event which your neighbour deems a tragedy?
Absolutely not, because that is an event that is a clear-cut operation to liberate the territories that were under occupation, illegally under occupation. Croatia was attacked. We were under aggression, and about 1/3 of our territory was occupied. We took legitimate action, which was later confirmed by the Hague Tribunal in the cases of the general that I mentioned.
Serbia
of course, we are concerned about our relationship with Serbia, but Serbia has also to accept the facts. We all have the right to our own opinion, but we don't have the right to our own facts. And the facts is that we were defending ourselves and that we were taking our own territory under control. We cannot give up on what is our national heritage and what we are proud of, and what is not aimed against anyone, but is simply celebrating what we've done in Croatia.
You mentioned resolving issues. I'd like to bring in this question then from Dr. Nebojša Kirstik, who says, when will Serbs who survived what he calls ethnic cleansing in Operation Storm be able to return to their homes? Because obviously that's one of the issues that...
There was no ethnic cleansing. Yes, it's true that a number of civilian population left because of the operation, but we were inviting them all along to stay in their homes. And ever since, we have been working on the return of all the persons, and everybody who wants to return has the right to return. Most people have returned who desire to do so.
Okay, well, let's look at the wider framework of Europe, migration, which is a big problem at the moment for Europe, as they try and figure out how to deal with it. Where does Croatia stand on the issue of the quotation system that's been suggested by the European Commission?
Well, our position is that we have to look at the problem of migration and asylum seekers in a holistic and a comprehensive way. Yes, we're taking these measures that will be temporary with the quota and with making adjustments for people to live in the European Union, but we have to be careful about what messages we're sending. Of course, we will accept people, but we cannot also encourage further illegal migrations into the European Union. We also need to address the root causes and some of the other dangers that go along with it.
And what's your reaction to Hungary, that has said that it wants to close its border with you to stop the flow of migrants into its country?
Well, I don't want to talk about another country's policies, but what I can certainly say is that Croatia has no intention of building walls. We look at that problem as something that is becoming a lot more important for the European Union.
So you oppose Hungary building a fence?
I think, again, we need solidarity in this issue. We cannot let only Italy and a couple of other countries to bear the burden of this problem. But again, we need a comprehensive and holistic approach to this issue.
I received this question from someone who goes by the name of Prima Lex, who says, this is a simple question for a complicated answer. Would you say that you're better off now that you're in the EU?
It's hard to judge still. I have to say that it hasn't really settled in people's minds that we're a member of the European Union. And unfortunately, what hasn't happened yet is that we haven't used the EU funding to the extent that we could have. So one of the primary benefits that can be felt in the short term has not yet affected Croatia. And I would say that the public in Croatia is probably becoming more Eurosceptic, and we need to do something about it, because we should be worried about the whole European project. It's not just about Croatia. I see that practically any other country in the European Union, that people have started to question about the benefits of accession.
And when you joined the European Union, fighting corruption was obviously one of the big issues for Croatia, amongst others, of course. Yes. Exactly. How clean is Croatia from corruption now, would you say?
I would say that we have made a lot of progress. Unfortunately, any society, it's not possible to eradicate corruption completely, but we're working towards really fighting and preventing that we have a proper deterrent system in place, and then that we educate people that some of the practices that have been deemed socially acceptable in the past are actually forms of corruption.
The reality on the ground is, though, I was just reading an Ernst & Young report which ranked Croatia as the first in its corruption perception index in terms of business dealings. So you may say that, yes, laws have been enacted, things have changed, but people aren't noticing it.
It's true, but I think that perception index it's a bit similar like domestic violence. Today we have a lot more people reporting domestic violence, and it doesn't really mean whether it's on the rise or not. It's a worrisome trend. The same with corruption. People now notice and report it, and they're a lot more aware of corrupt practices. And I think that these high-level cases have also created that image.
Croatia obviously has a difficult past in terms of corruption. You mentioned awareness of the issue. You're the protege of the former Prime Minister, Ivo Sanader.
I don't like that word. I'm sorry. I was not a protege.
You worked with him.
I was his colleague.
Okay. When did you realise then? When did you realise what was going on?
I realised only when it all broke out in the public. Very honestly, when I worked with him, I could not notice anything of what we're hearing right now. The trials are not over yet, so let's wait for the final outcomes, because in everyone's system, he has been convicted on several counts, but it's still not over, so let's wait for the final outcome of the whole process. Again, I worked with him very closely, that's true, ever since 1993. I worked in his office when he was deputy minister. Then I left in 1997 and came back in 2003 to run for parliament. We soon started having disagreements. It wasn't about corruption, because again, I didn't notice anything. But we just have different views on certain aspects, and I don't like to talk about it in the public because it's basically disagreements between us, and I hope that one day I'll have a chance to discuss it with him in person.
Economic growth in Croatia has been tricky. Corruption and economic growth don't necessarily go hand in hand, but Croatia does seem to be emerging from 6 years of recession. The government says that's thanks to its hard work and diligence. What's your position on that?
It's an election year in Croatia, so in any country, it's always a difficult year to continue with reforms. All governments tend to please the voters, but it's crucial for Croatia to continue with the reform processes. I'm sure that the economic recovery is partly due to outside forces and increased spending, but I'm also sure that the reforms are taking effect.
And you have said that you would like Croatia to join the euro by 2020. Is that one of your goals?
I said that that's the earliest time that I think Croatia could join the eurozone. And yes, I think that it would be in our interest to join the eurozone as soon as possible. I don't know whether, I hope that we'll be ready by 2020, but you know, it's not just a technical process. It's oftentimes a political process as well, so it will depend on some political decisions as well. So the whole economy is so euro-oriented that I think that the sooner we join, the better it will be for the whole economy.
Some of your critics might say that it's kind of beyond your presidential mandate to comment on issues like joining the euro. What's your response to that?
Well, we're all entitled to our own opinion and to our own ambitions, and I'm very ambitious for Croatia, and I'm very optimistic about Croatia. I believe we can do it. And if we don't talk about it, if we don't set goals, if we don't set timelines, we're never going to do it.
So this is an election year, and you, well, have just been elected as well yourself this year, and there's been an uncomfortable period of cohabitation with the government, which is obviously on the opposite side of the political spectrum, and there's been a certain amount of feuding at the top. Do you regret that?
I do regret that, because I don't think it's time to have any feuding, as you said, or any divisions on our basic national goals. I think we should really agree upon them and continue working towards them. However, sometimes you do have to take a stand for what you believe. You also have to protect the office, the institution of the president, and you have to do what's right. However, I hope that this has been just a learning period, the initial learning period, and that we're heading towards a future of more cooperation.
So I'd like to bring in another voice. It's Terry Kilpatrick, who says, what is the biggest threat to Croatian economic growth and stability?
Demography. The negative demographic trends. A lot of young people leaving Croatia now with the markets in the European Union opening up to Croatian workers. we estimate, or the Commission has estimated, that about 200,000 people will leave Croatia by 2019. And we're a country of about 4.3 million people.
And it's the best and the brightest who tend to leave.
The best and the brightest who will leave, and the young ones. And we have negative demographic trends. We're aging. Our workforce is diminishing, so we'll pretty soon, if we don't reverse the trends, we'll pretty soon have the number of unemployed and pensioners exceed the number of workers who have to feed them, to say so, in terms of providing for the benefits that they're receiving. So demography is certainly one of the biggest problems.
You've made history because you are the first female president of Croatia, and I'd like to bring in a question from Don Kessi, who says, how do you feel being the first female president of Croatia?
Well, in all truth, I never put people in the categories of male, female, or based on their ethnicity, religious background, etc. I look at people the way that they do their job, their capabilities, their professional standards, and the way that
So it didn't mean anything to you that you...
it does mean, of course, but the fact that we're talking about it, it means that I'm an exception rather than a rule. I am an exception, unfortunately, and I hope... so I have to say that, yes, I have encountered misogynism and sexism. I don't take it personally. Throughout my life, I've had so much of it. I've really gotten used to it. It hurts you in the beginning, and then you stop taking it personally, and you realize that if you want to change it, you have to start doing something about it yourself. So one of the main points on my agenda is really working towards complete equality, not just between men and women, but really everybody in the society, that we look at individuals regardless of their background.
So you wouldn't describe yourself as a feminist?
No, I'm not a feminist. I'm a person who just wants to see equality, equal treatment for everyone. So yes, I will push for the agenda of promoting women in businesses, in political and social life, in public life, but it doesn't mean that I want women to be advantaged in any way. I just want equal opportunities for everyone.
Do you use your femininity to your advantage?
No, I don't, at least not consciously, but the fact that I am a woman is something that I'm proud of, and I don't feel that I need to look like a man in order to be taken seriously. Unfortunately, some circles, they expect you to do so, and there are a lot of women who think that if they become less feminine, they will be taken more seriously. I think we should do away with that.
And who are your political role models?
Well, it's difficult to pinpoint. I certainly like Margaret Thatcher a lot. Of the current politicians and statespersons, I like the style of Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany. But I don't stick just to political role models. I look at role models anywhere. And I actually try to just set the standards as well, because following a role model is easy. Creating a role model is the challenge, it's the difficult path.
What would your advice be to women who are trying to break through that glass ceiling, like you have done?
Very simple. If I could do it, you can. Anybody can do it. You just have to believe in it. You have to believe in yourself. Yes, it gets a lot tougher than for men from time to time. But don't get distracted by those who tell you that you can't do it because you're a woman, that a woman has never been in a position like that. There's always a first. Why don't you be the first one?
President, many thanks for joining me on the Global Conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.